The real issue is not whether you're black or white, whether you're a woman or a man. In my view, a woman could be elected president of the United States. The real issue is, whose side are you on? Are you on the side of workers and poor people, or are you on the side of big money and the corporations?
So what you guys just heard there was Bernie Sanders in the 1980s making a crystal clear point that he does indeed believe a woman can become president of the United States. And that if that woman, if that person of color stands with working people against the rich and wealthy and well-connected, he could support them. That's the context of that clip. And the reason I'm talking about that right now is because of some unfortunate remarks that have come from Elizabeth Warren and her campaign team. Earlier today, CNN and many other news outlets ran a story which said that Bernie Sanders reportedly told Elizabeth Warren that she could not win because a woman can't beat Donald Trump or a woman can't be president in 2020. And initially, this story was almost fully rooted in hearsay and conjecture. I actually feel it was really irresponsible for those news outlets to run with that story. CNN to originally run with it, and then many others to basically piggyback off CNN as the story itself. But Warren did come out and suggest that Bernie Sanders did indeed say that a woman can't be president. Now, I want to read you Warren's quote. Bernie and I met for more than 2 hours in December 2018 to discuss the 2020 election, our past work together, and our shared goals: beating Donald Trump, taking back our government from the wealthy and well-connected, and building an economy that works for everyone. Among the topics that came up was what would happen if the Democrats nominated a female candidate. I thought a woman could win. He disagreed. I have no interest in discussing this private meeting any further because Bernie and I have far more in common than our differences on punditry. I'm in this race to talk about what's broken in this country and how to fix it. And that's what I'm going to continue to do. I know Bernie is in the race for the same reason. We have been friends and allies in this fight for a long time, and I have no doubt we will continue to work together to defeat Donald Trump and put our government on the right side of the people. I frankly don't believe this. I have a lot of respect for Elizabeth Warren. I think she's one of the best progressive politicians in the United States. Certainly at the highest levels of government. One of the best senators that country has, and maybe has had for a very long time. But I don't believe this. Bernie Sanders has for generations stood for women's political equality. There was that clip I showed you on the outset. There's also been a clip floating around where Bernie Sanders is speaking to young school children more than a generation ago, probably nearly 2 generations ago, where he talks to those young people and he says to them that there are women politicians, there are women senators and women governors, but there's not enough of them. And he says to the little girls in the room that you can be president. And he's telling them to dream to that level, to aspire to that level, to break, as Hillary Clinton called it, the hardest and highest glass ceiling. Bernie Sanders is a fundamental believer in that, and I don't really think that's changed. It should also be remembered that Bernie Sanders asked Elizabeth Warren to run in the 2015-2016 Democratic primaries. There's maybe even a chance that Bernie Sanders would have supported Elizabeth Warren if she decided to run. He felt Elizabeth Warren belonged in that race. And we also have to remember that when Hillary Clinton defeated Bernie Sanders, whatever you think about Clinton, whatever you think about the DNC's role in that primary, Bernie Sanders worked his butt off for Hillary Clinton. He held dozens of events for her. He worked harder for Clinton than Clinton ever did for Obama. He worked extremely hard to make her president because he believed that despite their differences, they needed to defeat Donald Trump. And I know that Bernie Sanders, despite his disagreements with Hillary Clinton on so many issues, fundamentally understood how important and historic it would have been to have the first female president, even if she wasn't aligned with Bernie Sanders on all issues all the time. Bernie offered a response, not to Elizabeth Warren's statement right here, but to the general piece floating from CNN. We don't yet have Bernie's most up-to-date response to Elizabeth Warren's direct remarks, but I want to read you Bernie's response. It is ludicrous to believe that at the same meeting where Elizabeth Warren told me she was going to run for president, I would tell her that a woman couldn't win. It is sad that 3 weeks before the Iowa caucus and a year after that private conversation, staff who weren't in the room are lying about what happened. What I did say that night was that Donald Trump is a racist, a sexist, and a liar who would weaponize whatever he could. Do I believe a woman can win in 2020? Of course. After all, Hillary Clinton beat Donald Trump by 3 million votes in 2016. And I believe Bernie here. I trust Bernie. That's a hashtag going around on Twitter right now. Hashtag I trust Bernie. And the reason I trust Bernie isn't because I fundamentally distrust Elizabeth Warren. The reason I trust Bernie is that Bernie Sanders has a multi-generational record of standing up for women's rights and standing with women as they fought for those rights. That's why I trust Bernie. I do not believe Elizabeth Warren's interpretation of that evening. I don't believe it. What I do think is that Bernie Sanders did outline the various challenges that various candidates would face. And Elizabeth Warren as a woman would face different challenges than Bernie Sanders as a man. Women in politics have noted this. Joe Biden has noted this. Media figures have noted this. It's a simple reality. None of that is to say that a woman couldn't win or shouldn't run, but it is to acknowledge that each candidate will have different opportunities and different drawbacks. Bernie Sanders may well have said that, but that is in no way Bernie Sanders saying or even implying that Elizabeth Warren shouldn't run or couldn't win. At the end of the day, this just makes me really sad. Again, I have a lot of respect and admiration for Elizabeth Warren, and the friendship and comradeship between her and Bernie Sanders has been a breath of fresh air in American politics. Earlier in this primary process, we saw it when everyone thought Warren and Sanders were going to fight for the progressive vote. They instead stood by one another in the debates, and in so doing, both of them did better. Both of them grew. Both of them challenged the neoliberals. And I hope that because of that solidarity, one of the two would win, and the other one who wasn't so fortunate would fully and unreservedly back the other. But right now, with this sort of remark from the Warren campaign, and Warren doubling down on it, it's just really disappointing. Bernie Sanders has stood with and for women as they fought for political equality. He's done that, he's doing it, and he will continue to do it regardless of what happens in this primary process. That's what matters here. And what really matters here is that Bernie Sanders is trying to implement a social and economic and political vision that will help all Americans, but where gender equality is a fundamental concern. Bernie Sanders knows where he stands. Bernie Sanders supporters know where he stands. And it's not along the lines of what Elizabeth Warren and her team have said today.